36 people are confirmed dead now after a devastating warehouse fire in Oakland, California. Sadly, that number is expected to rise. The building, known as the Ghost Ship, reportedly was converted into art studios and illegal living spaces despite not having residential permits. We're learning inspectors investigated the building just weeks before the fire.
It's been on the neighborhood's radar for a long time. And certainly the activity of the manager that managed that facility was challenged.
Let's bring in our legal panel. We have Jonna Spilbor, a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Also, Emily Campagno, a former federal attorney and former criminal defense attorney. Emily, you're from that area. You know this area well. You point out housing prices very expensive, so it's perhaps no surprise that a bunch of people were living in a building they're not supposed to be living in?
Right, and notwithstanding their kind of dedication to this art, work, study lifestyle, that's absolutely no excuse or no reason to have them living in this kind of condition. That was a makeshift, labyrinthian, totally under code warehouse where, as they say, every time they got home, it looked different to them as well. There's absolutely no excuse for this level of, honestly, criminal negligence.
We just heard in that bit of sound somebody talking about the manager of this building. Does the manager bear the responsibility for what happened there? Who winds up responsible?
The manager very well could be among those who are going to bear responsibility, John, because there are levels of liability here, starting with the building owner. What did that person or that entity know about the living conditions, the code violations? Was this somebody who was an absentee landlord and all of these people, these partygoers and now victims, were they trespassers or were they there with the knowledge of the owner? And who was the agent for the owner? And why did the city, in your slot, you just had that person say this building was on the radar for a long time. The city investigated 3 weeks ago. What were they doing in the 2 years before that could have prevented this tragedy?
Well, those who would sue in a circumstance like this always go for the deep pockets.
Of course.
Is that the city?
The city is going to, most likely the city will be the deepest pocket because we don't know a whole lot about the owner or the agents of the owner. So definitely the city will be sued. When the civil lawsuits start happening, they will be sued. There may also be, though, some criminal liability on part of the owner, John, because there was a recent case in California that came down and said if an owner of a property is so grossly negligent that it causes the death of, in that case, it was a firefighter, criminal charges ensued. This is going to be such a wide net.
But what if it was arson? I mean, they don't know what started the fire. What if somebody lit this thing intentionally? Is it still the responsibility of the city or the building's owner?
Yes, it is. And John is right. There's absolutely a multi-layered, complex kind of web of liability here. And it means that no one's off the hook because everyone's responsible for the deplorable conditions that people knew about. When I mentioned criminal negligence earlier, part of that is a reckless behavior. So it means that a reasonable person would, if they engaged in that behavior, that they knew or should have known that this would result in bodily injury to the harm of that degree. And it doesn't matter if you didn't intend it or not. And the fact that this operator here was requesting and receiving funds that were dedicated towards an improvement of the warehouse shows that he knew that certainly there was vast room for improvement, obviously.
But if it's an artist's collective, an artist's working space, I mean, you know, a lot of these artists like to go to work at midnight and, you know, work on their art all night long. I'm just saying that an owner might not necessarily know that people were living there.
An owner might not know, but there's a duty upon the owner that he or she or the entity should know. If you are actively engaged, if you're inviting people to rent your space, then you have a duty to make sure that it's up to code and it's safe. If you're not, if this owner had no intention of renting it and somebody else was doing it on their behalf, unbeknownst to them, that's going to change the game. But if the owner actually knew, you have a duty to keep it safe, and he or she, the entity, is going to definitely be on the hook for this.
Yeah, it is just such an awful story.
So avoidable. That's what makes it so awful.
That's the sad part, too.
Yeah.
Jonna Spilbor, Emily Campagno, thank you.
Thank you.